Hi folks, this is Meredith from the Papery Craftery, and today we are making some really quick jasmine flowers from quilling paper. We're going to be making some leaves as well. We have 1/8 inch wide white for the petals, and then whatever green you like. This is just a nice bright leaf, kind of Kelly green, we're going to be using for the leaves. We're going to be using a little bit wider paper, this 3/8 inch wide. We have a pale yellow and a little bit of white. We only need about 2 inches of each of those for each flower, so you don't need too much. You're going to need a needle tool if you like that, and I would also grab a slotted tool, even if you're using the needle tool. That's going to come in handy. Tweezers and small scissors. We're going to be using some pins on our workboard. So you're going to want to grab a cork board or a nice thick piece of cardboard. For glue, we're using our Elmer's glue on the needle nose container to build the quilling, but then also tacky glue as well. And then we're going to be using our paper crimper just a little bit. Now there are apparently 200 different kinds of jasmine flower out there in the world, but this is what we are going for, which is just a 5 petal. I like the way they're kind of wider at the top, and then they have that nice fringed center. Some jasmine have longer, skinnier petals. Some have lots and lots of very kind of fluffy, fluttery petals, kind of compact, but we're going for the type that I just pictured there. We're going to start off with the center of the flower, kind of that fringy bit that we saw in the middle. And to do that, we're going to take that wider 3/8 inch paper, about 2 inches of a pale yellow and just a white. We're going to run the yellow through one of the tighter teeth on our paper crimper there, just to give it a little bit of texture. If you don't have a paper crimper, you can fringe this piece. We're going to be fringing the white, but if you'd rather just go with fringing the yellow as well, you can do that. Or if you don't want to do either, you can just roll up that yellow bit into a coil. But like I said, for the white, we are going to fringe. So I have some scissors here, and I'm just going pretty close. This is a pretty fine fringe here I'm trying to do. So I'm really just using my scissors and just very carefully going down this strip as close to each other as I can, but making sure that I'm not going through the entire side of the paper so it doesn't get cut off. And then once I get close enough to the side here that I can't hold it anymore, I'm just going to flip it over and then finish up that little bit. There we go. And now these two together are going to make the center of our jasmine flower. And I mentioned earlier that even if you're using a needle tool for most of this project, you might want to grab a slotted tool. And that is really just for this part. You can use a slotted tool for the rest of this project as well. But for this part particularly, it is helpful to use a slotted tool when you're trying to roll anything that you've gone through a paper crimper, just because when you're using a needle tool, you have to use your fingers more to hold the paper, and that could smush out the texture that you just created. So we're using our slotted tool here and rolling it all the way from end to end without letting it open. Very carefully gluing down the end. I don't want to push too hard because, like I said, I don't want to lose that texture. It's not super noticeable in the flower. It's just one of those small details. But still, I don't want to lose everything I just made there. Just get that to set gently. And then I'm going to keep it on my tool, and I'm going to add the white fringe. And I want this to be just a tiny bit taller than my yellow. I just want it to stick up a little bit higher. So you can see, I don't even know how small that measurement is, but just the tiniest bit taller. And I glued down one end, and I could keep it on my tool or you can take it off. Either way, it's fine. I'm just going to gently roll the rest of this fringe around And when I get to the other end, we're just gonna glue that little piece down. And if you roll this tight enough, you don't have to glue the entire way. You can just do the start and the finish. But that's what we're looking for at this point. We're going to be playing around with that a little bit more later. But for now, we just want to get the yellow wrapped around with the white fringe and then set that aside. And we're going to work on the petals. So for the petals, we're going to more of a standard width paper, the 1/8 inch or 3 millimeters as well. And I'm going to be using half of this strip. It's going to be about 9 inches or so once it's torn. And we're going to be making each petal in 2 parts. So this first 9 inches is going to be one part. The second 9 inches that I just tore off is going to be the other part. So 2 halves together are what's going to make each individual flower petal. So I'm going back to my needle tool here just because that's what I prefer, but you can, like I mentioned earlier, use your slotted tool for this. We're going to roll it all the way to the end and let it open up pretty naturally. I'm going to go ahead and just make the point that I want first and then glue that tail down. You can glue first and then make your point second if you want. And then for the shape, I'm kind of bending it back over my thumb and making a small point on the other side. So it's not a true half moon because the one point on the right there is a little bit deeper. Let's roll the other one here just to see it again. Getting this rolled all the way to the end. Oop, I think rolling around today. And let that open up to about the same size. Give it a good pinch and glue down the end. So I got the good pinch on the right side, and then on the left side, I'm bending it back over my thumb and just giving a small pinch to the top. Oops. Those 2 pieces together are what's going to make one of my petals. So to put them together, we're just going to apply some glue to the long flat edge and sandwich them down. Now I really can press down on the right side here because I really want that side to be nice and pointy. But I want the left side to come together as tight as it can without losing that width at the top. And I really didn't like how sometimes some of the petals were kind of separating at the top. Paper has a memory, and so it generally kind of wants to rebel itself a little bit when you're trying to push it together, especially when you get to those tight points. So I'm going to use a couple pins and an extra little dot of glue right on that white end just to get them super tight as they dry. If yours come together, you won't need to do this. There we go. I'm going to set that to dry, and then I have 4 more of the same exact thing because, like I said, we have 5 petals to this type of jasmine. So as our petals are drying, let's go ahead and make some leaves. These are going to be like the quickest leaves you could ever make. You could make this same shape in more sections and then put them together, or you can make, I have a lot of videos on my channel about making different types of greenery, but this is going to be super fast and actually fairly similar to the way we made the petals. So I'm rolling up here, these are 18-inch paper strips. I'm rolling them up all the way to the end, letting them open up, and glue down the tail on this one. And instead of pinching them right away like I did last time, I'm going to put down that coil there and roll up the second paper. It's the same length strip, just because I want these two to be as close as possible to the same size once they open up. This is something you could have done with your flower petals as well if you're concerned that the two halves of your petals are not about the same size once you start forming them, you can make the coils and then before you glue them, kind of hold them on top of each other like this and make sure they're about the same size. And that way when you start pinching and forming them, if you have to put two pieces together, they will fit nicely. They'll be about the same size. So there is our second circle. And I'm going to hold the center, give one pinch on one side and one pinch on the other side. Just a nice half circle there. And the same thing. Big pinch on one side and big pinch on the other side. And then just like our petals, we're going to glue the long ends together. And there we go. And don't worry about pushing these down too much. You're not going to squish them all the way. You just want kind of a nice pointy oval shape here to these leaves. They're pretty broad in the center, but they're pointy on either end. And that's about it. And you can make these any size you want. I have some larger ones, and then I made some smaller ones as well. There's some smaller ones. And just make as many or as few as you like, depending on how you were planning on using your flowers. The green really will break up all the white from the flowers, so you might want to have a few extra of these on hand. The other thing that you might need if you're making sort of a composition with these flowers is some straight bits for little stems and also some flower buds. I have here some teardrops that I turned into eclectic teardrops, which means that the center is pushed all the way to one side. That's a good example on the bottom there. I have a video on how to make eccentric coils and turn them into different shapes, and I will leave that in the description box for this video. You can just make standard teardrops as well if you'd rather for little flower buds. So now let's go ahead and put everything together. We have our fringed center here, and if you refer back to the original kind of reference videos, the fringe sometimes is kind of in two different layers. So that's what I was doing here. And I am taking my needle tool and gently pushing the outmost fringe work down so it's kind of separated. And then there's another layer of the white fringe that's a little bit closer to the yellow, but I just want to open that up just a tiny bit so it's not right on top. There we go. Just get that spread out a little bit. So now we have two different layers of the fringe. And just to make this a little bit easier to put together, I'm going to put that on my cork board and put a pin right through the center of the yellow, and that's going to keep it in place. I'm going to put my petals together on the center of my flower with tacky glue. You can use Elmer's regular glue or whatever glue you prefer. And then the last thing that I did just to make this a little bit easier to put together is we made that nice crisp point, which is wonderful, but it's hard to get it to stay on the center because there's just not a lot of surface area to glue. So what I like to do is kind of push it down flat with one of my tools, and that just gives the glue a little bit more paper to stick to, and it's hidden underneath the fringe, so you can't really see it. It just made it a little bit sturdier. So again, just kind of shove that down just a little bit, just to make it a tiny bit flatter, and then dipping it in a glue, and then placing the flower petals around sort of a star shape. They are nice and separated, which is another reason why this flower is a little bit tricky to get to stay together. A lot of the flowers we make with quilling, not only are they glued to the center of a flower, but the sides of the flowers touch, which you can put a little bit of glue there and they stay together a little bit more sturdily. These ones, it's just not the way that they are made, which is part of the reason why I wanted to make this flower. I just like the way that the flower petals were separated and a little bit more unique than what we do a lot of the times. So there is our last petal. Get that right there. And we can let that dry. After a few minutes of this setting, we're going to mold the flower a little bit just to make it a little bit more lifelike, not as flat. And a lot of times when I'm molding flowers, I will put them in a mold to get kind of a dome shape to them. Another problem with these flower petals being so delicately placed on the center is that they're tricky to move and to mold that way. But what I discovered is if I just kind of push up my parchment paper on my board a little bit, the petals will dry against that kind of hump in the paper and get a little bit of movement that way. And then I can pin them into place as they dry. That was a little bit too humped there. Let's push that down a little bit and redo it. There we go. But you can see there's kind of a little bump in the parchment paper there. The petal is kind of resting on it, and even the one next door to it gets a little bit of movement. And that way you don't have to move this from the board to, let's say, a quilling mold or something like that. And you can see there, just a little bit of movement. It's not a huge domed flower. It's just a little bit of life, so they're not lying super flat. I don't know. I thought that was pretty interesting, and it really worked well for these flowers. So I think I'm going to try that again in the future. All right, let's go ahead, and now that this last one is dry, we'll take those pins out and see how it is molded up against that bit of paper. There we go. And you can definitely see by the shadow already underneath, it's got a little bit of lifeness to it. There you go. Fun. All right, let's go ahead and just sort of make a quick little composition with a few of these jasmine flowers here. Another good thing about having them, having the petals sort of at different levels is you can easily tuck some greenery underneath them. And it just makes everything look a little bit more realistic than having just things just flat and everything on the same plane. So it definitely makes it look more realistic. So I'm just quickly tucking some of the leaves around, and here is just a little bit of a stem that we can tuck underneath here. And obviously I'm not gluing anything. This isn't permanent. This is just playing around here, just showing how everything can come together. Put one of our little buds there. Maybe do another one underneath there, going in the other direction. But you get the picture. Just fooling around here, seeing what we can create. I'd love to hear what you think about the jasmine. I'd love to hear what you think about using the parchment paper on the cork board to mold flowers instead of moving them into a quilling mold or a lid of a jar or a little glass bowl or other things that we've used before in the past. So whatever it is, leave those comments down in the comment section, any questions you have as well, and I'll answer those as soon as I can. I will leave links to all the tools and supplies I used in the description box of this video. I'll also leave a link to that eclectic coil video that I mentioned as well. And I also have a link to my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can find ways to support the channel, keep it growing week after week, and allow me to keep making videos. And it also has a bunch of quilling extras that you can find there. Two brand new things are these quilling paper strip checklist printables. You can keep track of what you have, different sizes, what you need to order. I have a US version and also a metric measurement version as well. Just wanted to make sure that that printable was available for everyone, because the support that I've gotten from people all over the world, in addition to my home country over the years, has been greatly appreciated. And I also just wanted to take a moment to mention how fully I stand with the immigrant community in my own country. The diversity in culture they bring to our communities is incredibly important, and we definitely wouldn't be the same without them. So I really hope everybody is being safe out there and looking out for each other. In the meantime, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can be around for my next video, and I'll see you then. Thanks so much for watching. Bye-bye.